Hello, computer scientist, Mr. Lang here, and I'm going to work on showcasing our virtual machine, our Ubuntu virtual machine that we have created. And this virtual machine allows us to just be creative. You know what? Play around with it. If we mess things up and break things on our virtual machine, it's not going to affect our host machine, which I'm using Windows 10 as our host machine, as my host machine on my laptop. And so let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, you can see that we have some notes, and my students have notes as well about their virtual machine. And the first thing that we kind of do is check our host computer's specs. And so on our notes here, it does tell us to press our Windows key and type in system information. When I press it, it's on a different monitor. So I'll go ahead and click it because it showed up on a different monitor. And I'm going to go ahead and type in system information. If I can just start typing system, information appears with it. So I'm going to go ahead and load that up, and I'll bring this over. It appeared on a different monitor. Let me go ahead and adjust a little bit here so it's not so crazy. So this is our host machine that we are using, a Windows 10 based machine. It's hardware, so I'm using my laptop. So this gives me what operating system our host machine is. A couple other things you can see in our notes here that we want to pay attention to is what type of operating system do we have? Do we have a 32-bit or a 64-bit? So we took notes on, we have a 64-bit operating system. I also asked my students, hey, we want to pay attention to the CPU. How many cores does it have? And so this is our processor, known as our central processing unit. Very important to know how many cores your host machine has. And mine has 4 cores. We noted that in our notes over here, all right, at 4 cores. All right, we also want to know about its memory. So we came over to our host computer, and we have 16 gigs of installed physical memory, our RAM, our random access memory. And we talked about that in class of what that is. And then we needed to know what our hard drive space was. Now, you're not going to find that on your system information, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. You will find it on your File Explorer. So you can either press your Windows E key on your keyboard to bring up your Explorer, and it has your local disk C here, and that tells me that mine has 952 gigs, but I only have 389 free on that hard drive. And so we made a note of that on our notes as well. So once we know kind of our host computer's hardware specs, we're able to set up our virtual machine specs, because we can't have more than what we have on our host machine, our Windows 10. So here's my Ubuntu. I'm going to click once on my Ubuntu, and I'm going to go down to my Edit Virtual Machine Settings. And we've already set up our virtual machine, but a couple of things that we paid close attention to was our memory here. So if you look down at our virtual machine, well, our host had 16 gigs of RAM. We installed half of that, so we brought it up to 8 gigabytes. Our host machine had 4-core processor. We then put 2 cores as our processor. Again, some of that information that we put in our notes down here. We also wanted to know about the processing of our Ubuntu, so that is under Options. If I go to Options, we installed the 64-bit version. When we actually got the files online, we made sure that we chose that we wanted to download the 64-bit version. And then our hard disk size. I asked my students to do 30 gigabytes. I have 60 gigabytes on mine. Again, if we look at our notes, I asked our students to do 30 gigs. I know mine is at 60, but I've had mine installed for a while now, and I have a few more things than my students will have on their virtual machine. So we have our hardware set up, all right? So again, very important to know the system limitations when setting up your virtual machine. So I'm going to click OK to that, and now I'm going to actually power on my virtual machine again. So I'm going to go ahead and click play here, and depending on how many applications you have, depending on your RAM, depending on your processing speed, it all varies, will depend on how fast your operating system will load up. We always get these software warnings. I'm going to remind me later on those. And so I'm going to kind of bring over my notes at this time. I don't need them right now. We'll talk more about those in a little bit. But we are starting our virtual machine. So again, it may take a little bit to start. And so I'm going to go ahead and just pause my video here for a second, and I'll bring it back once I get it loaded up. And once you know it, as soon as I paused my video, this came up. So we set it up again with our own passwords. Students set up their own passwords for their virtual machine. Again, once we put the password in, it may take a couple seconds or so to load things up. But here is my virtual machine, and I like to go into full screen mode. That will then look like I am completely nested, if you will, into my virtual machine. If I ever need to get back to my VMware player's software, I can hover over this bar up above and I can get to my VMware player. All right. So with that though, I ask students to kind of set up their virtual machine, personalize it. So you can see on mine, I put a cool image as my background. I put my favorite bar down below here. You can go into the settings and choose where you want your bar to be. I've installed a couple applications. I'll talk more about those in a little bit. But once we get our operating system up and running for the first time, I tell my students, hey, right now it's important to make a backup because we're going to install some software and things. We're going to update some things, and we don't want things to go haywire, if you will. We want a backup. So we are going to work through the process of backing up and updating our operating system. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to shut down our virtual machine. So we need to open up a terminal. So I'm going to go to my notes, and in my notes, I have here how to shut down my virtual machine. Shut down my Linux operating system. We're going to open up a command line interface through the terminal. How do I do that? In my notes, to open a terminal, Control-Alt-T. And then we're going to do a sudo shutdown now. It may ask for our password, but I'm going to click back on my virtual machine, Control-Alt-T, and that will bring up my terminal. I'll type in sudo shutdown now and enter, and it asks for my password. You cannot see any asterisks or anything moving along the screen for security purposes, but it is powering down my virtual machine. So now we need to back up our virtual machine. So I need to open up my File Explorer, all right, and I need to navigate to where I have my virtual machine stored. So I got a few different virtual machines here, and I'm going to go to my Ubuntu, and here I have two directories, a backup and an operating system. All right, so I am going to go to my backup, and you can see I've created a backup about a week or so ago, but I'm going to create a new directory. All right, and that is a Control-Shift-N on my keyboard. There's other ways to do it as well. And I'm going to put today's date in here. Today is the 23rd of September of the great year of 2021. And so I have that directory open, and very important to open it up. If I look at my file path here, I can see that I have that directory open. I now am going to right-click on Ubuntu and, oh, well, maybe not. Sorry about that. I'm going to open up a new File Explorer by clicking on my first and last name on the desktop. And I'm going to go to my virtual machine, my VMware player. Again, I have a few different virtual machines. And now I am going to go to my operating system folder. This is where I have all of my operating system files. Okay, and kind of move things around a little bit here. And I need to back those up. I want to update my virtual machine, and I don't want to update it until I have a backup. Very important in our world to have availability of your operating system if things would happen to go haywire during the updating scenario. So I'm going to do a Control-A to select everything, Control-C to copy it. I'm going to click over on my backup and do a Control-V as in Victor to back it up. And so now it is taking all my files from here and making a backup. Very important to do, again, before you do any kind of system update. So I'm going to pause my video while it updates, and I'll be back here shortly. Okay, I have my files backed up. Again, this is my operating system directory. I took my operating system files and I backed them up into my newly created directory for today's date Again, you never want to delete these files, you just want to back them up. So I'm going to close these two directories. I'm going to open back up my VMware Player, the software application that we use to launch our virtual machines and to run our virtual machines. And I'm just going to double click on my virtual machine, and I will be right back once it loads up. Okay, I've loaded my virtual machine back up. I can go into full screen if I wish. All right, but I have notes that I want to bring over, and you can't see those notes on my host machine once I go full screen. So if I bring these over in my notes, I'm going to jump into my Ubuntu notes because I have some notes on how we're going to update our Linux operating system. It's asking us to open up a terminal. If we don't know how to open up a terminal, we have our notes right there, Control-Alt-T. And then we're going to go through these following commands. We're going to do a super user do. We're going to apt-get updates. We're going to update all of some files. We're going to go off to the internet, find if there's any updates. And if there are updates, then we are going to upgrade our system. And usually we'll ask you if you want to continue because it's going to take a small amount of space on your hard drive. Yes, I do. And once that gets done and it comes back to the command line interface or the terminal, you want to reboot your system. And you want to reboot it so that way all of your updates change. All right, and get taken place. So I'm going to move this off my screen, and I'm just going to follow that script as I work through my virtual machine. So I'm going to full screen that, Control-Alt-T to bring up my terminal, and I'm going to type in sudo for super user do, and apt, tac, or dash, get spacebar update. All right, so it's going to go look for updates. It's going to ask for my password to make sure that I have the privileges to do so. You can't see me typing, but it is. So it's going out again to the internet looking for updates. And it found some updates to maybe different software that I have installed and everything. So now it's coming back to the terminal. All right, so it has some updates. We now need to install them. So I'm going to go ahead and press my up arrow on my keyboard and simply take the word date out. Sorry about that bell. Hopefully that's not too loud in your ear. And change that to upgrade. And I'll go ahead and press my enter key. And now it is upgrading. Again, as I mentioned, it's asking, hey, do you want us to take 24.4 megabytes of space on your hard drive for these updates? Yes, I do. So I'll press the Y on my keyboard and press enter. And it is now going through the process of updating. And I always think this looks kind of cool, matrixy, if you will, with all of these updates working and going through and downloading the packages, installing these packages. Why would we want to update our operating system? Well, there's probably new security features, all right? There's always people out there trying to get into our operating systems to get valuable information. Maybe you are working as a head IT for a small business. You want to make sure that your clients, meaning your computers that are out throughout your business, are updated. Again, sorry for that bell. We're going through our lunches right now. So you want to make sure that those systems are updated with new security features. If you have applications installed, for example, I have my PC Charm, my Get Kraken, and other applications I've installed as well. There could be updates to those. Again, you want to make sure your software applications are updated. And also, you just want your operating system to be running at its full capabilities, at the highest speed and processing that you can. All right, so that's very important to make sure that you update your system. All right, and so now it has updated. We also want to reboot. So I press my up arrow, and I'm going to simply take out a few of these things, keep my sudo in there, and type in reboot. Reboot will allow your computer to take all those updates and really get them installed and make sure that things are running efficiently. Again, we made a backup, and you always want to make a backup before you do an update because you never know what could happen. I've actually installed some software or done an update where my operating system didn't load back up. What do I do? Would I have to start completely over? Nope, I could go to my backup and have that peace of mind that I'll be able to load up my virtual machine again. So let me go ahead and just log back in. And what I like to do once I log back into my virtual machine is just go ahead and look at some of the features of the operating system to make sure that it is still stable. All right, and so I'll full screen that, make sure my favorite bar is loaded up. So I may click on my system health monitor if just some different applications to load up. I may load up into my Google Chrome. There's my system monitor, kind of cool. You can find that in your waffle, if you will, if you want to check out your system monitor. All right, so if you type in system, there's a system monitor. I always think that's kind of cool just to kind of see. You click back on that to see what's going on with my central processing unit, my memory, how much memory am I using, is it maxed out, why is my computer running slow, what's going on with my network speeds and stuff like that. So that's always kind of cool to take a look at. I may load up my Google Chrome. Again, I have another couple pieces of software too. I'm not going to load all those up for this demonstration, but I would want to make sure that my system is running efficiently. Applications are loading up and still working okay. And now, again, we have a virtual machine to play around with, to dabble in, to, test out some cool things that we are going to learn about the Linux operating system with some of the command line interface tools. And you know what? If we break it, it's okay. We can still log into our computers because Windows 10 is our host computer. We're not affecting that at all. We're taking a small space on our hard drive, allowing us to play almost like a sandbox. We can build things and tear it down, build some things and tear it down. And that's what we're going to do. We are going to learn. So thank you for watching my video on my virtual machine that I have set up. I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe press a like button or subscribe to our Lang's Computer Science channel. That would be really cool. So have a great day.